After my house collapsed due to a hurricane, I asked parents if the twins and I could temporarily live with them, but they said I was a burden because they were going on a trip to Japan. My name is Hillary. As a dedicated medical professional, I live peaceful days alongside my husband, Nicholas, and our delightful 3-year-old twins, Joseph and Ryan. Our life was never flashy, but it was a happy one filled with the love of our family. However, that happiness was taken away in an instant. It was the day the hurricane struck our town. Since I was young, I always felt something was off with my relationship with my parents. My mother consistently prioritized her own needs, often neglecting household responsibilities. While my father was seldom home, his presence diminished by his relentless work commitments. My younger sister, Lindsay, and I often played together and supported each other. Rarely praised by our parents, I was more often sided with remarks like, "You're such a handful." This lack of familial support fueled my desire for early independence. I chose a career in medicine both to help people and to gain the strength to live without relying on anyone. It was during my college years that I met Nicholas, who was also on a path to a medical career. Drawn to his serious yet compassionate demeanor, our relationship naturally deepened over time. Despite the affection and connection that blossomed between us, my parents remained unimpressed by Nicholas, often questioning his sincerity with a skeptical, "He acts nice, but can you really trust him?" My mother would mutter that in suspicion, but to me, he was irreplaceable. Our commitment eventually led to marriage and the joyous blessing of twins, which made me feel as though I had truly found my place in the world. However, this sense of belonging and happiness was fleeting. One day, the news soon reported that a hurricane was ominously approaching our town, prompting us to hurriedly pack essential items and seek refuge in our basement. The wind howled, and the sound of breaking glass echoed. The twins, gripped by fear, clung to me while Nicholas reassured us, holding my hand and whispering, "It'll be okay." After the hurricane passed and dawn broke, we pushed against the basement door. Blocked by debris from outside, we exerted our strength several times before finally creating a gap to squeeze through. Before us lay a landscape of collapsed buildings, twisted steel beams, and mud-covered furniture scattered haphazardly. The roads were cracked, and utility poles had fallen, erasing any trace of what used to be. It wasn't just our home that was destroyed. The entire region shared this fate. Everywhere we looked, the destruction was evident, with the remnants of homes and debris scattered as far as the eye could see, and faint cries for help echoing in the distance. It didn't take long to realize that everything was lost. Yet, we couldn't just stand by. As medical professionals, Nicholas and I needed to work in the disaster area. However, the safety of our twins was paramount, and we could not leave them in such chaos. I reached out to my parents for help. "Mom, it's me. What's up all of a sudden?" Her response was as indifferent as ever. "A hurricane hit, our home is gone, and the whole town is in a terrible state." "Oh dear, that sounds tough. But you all are safe, right?" Her words felt detached, as if it was someone else's problem. "Yes, but I have a favor to ask. Could you take care of Joseph and Ryan for a while? Nicholas and I need to work here." On the other end, I heard my mother sigh. "It's difficult when you ask so suddenly. We have plans to go to Japan, and taking care of 3-year-old twins is too much of a burden." Her words cut deep into my heart. Holding back tears, I managed to say, "I understand," and ended the call, feeling abandoned in our hour of need. In my moment of despair, I received a call from Nicholas's parents. They had heard about the devastating damage in our area through the news and were concerned. After explaining our situation, they immediately understood and willingly agreed to take care of the twins. "It must have been hard. Don't worry about Joseph and Ryan. We'll arrange for them to come here right away." Their words slightly eased the tension I felt. I can't express how much relief they brought me. Though I felt sad being let down by my parents, the warmth from Nicholas's family enveloped my heart. With the twins now safe with his parents, Nicholas and I were able to dedicate ourselves fully to the medical needs of the disaster-struck community. After the hurricane passed and I stood amidst the devastated landscape, I felt as if my entire life had been trapped within the storm. Our home was completely destroyed, and while taking shelter in a refuge, we desperately provided medical support. Thanks to entrusting the twins to his parents, I could focus on my work with a sense of security. However, beneath that security lay a profound disappointment in my parents. Why did they refuse to support me, instead saying they were going to Japan and that taking care of the twins was too much of a burden? Their words pierced my heart deeply, and their indifference and cold attitude pushed me further to the edge. Gradually, that disappointment turned into anger, and each time I reflected on their actions, a great anger swelled within me. I had financially supported my parents out of a sense of duty rather than affection. They were people who loved luxury. My father once held a managerial position in a medium-sized company, and his income wasn't bad. However, my mother's spending habits strained our finances. New branded bags, high-end restaurants, overseas trips. For my mother, these were essentials for living a life true to herself. My father didn't complain, simply continuing to work in silence. However, our lives drastically changed after he took early retirement. Our savings quickly depleted, and despite this, my mother continued her extravagant spending unabated. From a young age, my parents consistently told me I was a disappointment. Yet, I never lost the desire to be loved. That's why, even after becoming independent through my medical career, I continued to send them $1,000 every month. "You owe your success to us, don't you?" my mother would say, taking the money as if it were her due. Honestly, it was a burden. but I couldn't let go of the faint hope that perhaps sending money might make them love me. I reached out to them for help. All I asked was for them to look after the twins, yet what I received in return were cold words. At that moment, emotions I had suppressed for years surged forth. I had been sending them money for years and was always ready to help whenever they needed, yet when I truly needed them, they offered no help at all. What had I been sending them money for all this time? That night, I cried into Nicholas's chest. He didn't say a word, just gently rubbed my back, and that kindness made me cry even more. Over a month, as we continued our work as medical professionals in the disaster zone, the situation gradually began to stabilize. A consistent support system was established, and as shelter and medical facility management improved, the necessity for emergency response diminished. The stabilization of supply chains and medical systems meant that our work at the scene increasingly shifted towards routine. Despite many remaining challenges, it was becoming palpable that the situation was slowly improving. Weeks later, I found myself thinking of my parents and peeked at my mother's social media account. There, I saw cheerful photos from their trip to Japan. Seeing my mother smiling as she ate sushi and walked around Asakusa in a kimono made something inside me snap. These people don't care about my suffering at all. And then I made a decision. I would stop supporting my parents. I needed to focus on protecting my own family. I contacted the bank and stopped the automatic transfers to my parents. At that moment, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. What followed was incessant contact from my parents. What's the meaning of this? The money hasn't been transferred, has it? What about this month's support? Are you abandoning us? I didn't respond to any of it. Hearing their voices would reopen my emotional wounds. But Nicholas wasn't my only ally. There was also my sister, Lindsay. She had reached out after hearing about the hurricane. Hillary, are you okay? I heard you're working in the disaster area with Nicholas and was worried. If there's anything I can do to help, just tell me. I expressed my gratitude to Lindsay from the bottom of my heart. Lindsay, thank you so much for worrying. Nicholas and I are doing well, and the situation here is stabilizing a bit. The twins are being looked after at Nicholas's parents' house, so they're fine. As I touched upon Lindsay's kindness, I naturally began to speak. But I'm really disappointed in our parents. When I asked them to take care of the twins, they said, "We're going on a trip to Japan, and taking care of the twins is too much of a burden." I was so frustrated. I stopped the support payments to our parents. Lindsay listened in silence for a while, but after I finished, she immediately responded. "Hillary, that must have been hard. Our parents have always been indifferent to us, and to act like that after all the support you've given is really disappointing. But what you've done for them up till now, I think that's amazing. They should appreciate it." Lindsay's words eased my mind a bit. Her understanding and encouragement felt like they lightened my emotional burden. As I navigated life with the support of the people I met in the disaster area, Nicholas's family, and Lindsay, I gradually began to reclaim our routine. We moved from the shelter to temporary housing and started a new life. The twins were laughing and healthy, and Nicholas and I were living busy but fulfilling days. Every time I thought of my parents, my heart ached, but I never regretted my decision. I felt no need to feel anything for their indifference. My parents continued to contact me, but their messages were never about concern for me or the twins, only complaints about how hard their lives had become and how much they had spent on their trip to Japan. And each time, I felt at my limit. Eventually, I blocked all contact with them and decided to cut ties completely. After deciding to sever ties with my parents, my life was transformed. We moved out of temporary housing and relocated to a new town surrounded by nature, a quiet and peaceful place. Our home was small, but for us, it symbolized hope. As Nicholas unlocked the front door and the twins playfully ran around, I took a deep breath. This is our new home. Nicholas smiled at me. I gripped his hand tightly. The local community warmly welcomed us, particularly a neighbor named Patty who reached out to me. "Welcome, Hillary. It must have been tough. If there's anything you need, don't hesitate to ask." She was plump with a kind smile, and she brought a homemade pie for us. I felt a warmth in my heart from her generosity. That evening, I attended a gathering at the community center that Patty had introduced to me. It was a place where disaster victims and supporters came together to help each other. "You're Hillary, right?" A man named Thomas approached me. He was a local firefighter and had been active in rescue operations during the hurricane. "I've heard about you guys. It sounds like you lost your home, but you and your husband are doing admirable work." Thomas's words made me tear up a little. Up until now, I had lived trying to meet my parents' expectations. But now it was different. There were people who truly understood us. Feeling recognized, I felt lighter in spirit. One day, I received a call from Lindsay. Even after cutting off relations with our parents, Lindsay and I had kept in touch regularly. She had always been concerned about me. "Hey, Hillary, how are you? How's the new town?" Lindsay's voice was gentle. "I'm gradually getting used to the new life. Everyone in the neighborhood is really nice." Hearing this, Lindsay seemed relieved. "That's good to hear. I'm glad you're doing well." I paused for a moment before asking about our parents. "How are they doing?" Lindsay hesitated but answered, "Same as always. But they seem to be struggling a bit since your support stopped. Recently they've been complaining about not having enough money and wondering why you suddenly stopped helping." Aunt mentioned that they've been airing these grievances. They're still posting photos of their travels on their social media accounts, but apparently, they're quite vocal about their complaints behind the scenes. They haven't contacted me though. Hearing this, I felt conflicted. Then, Lindsay quietly continued. "Let 'em be, Hillary. If you're happy now, that's what matters most." I sighed and confessed honestly. Honestly, I'm still trying to sort out my feelings. They are our parents, after all. But this was the right decision, wasn't it? Of course, Lindsay replied emphatically. You've always worked hard, Hillary. It's time to prioritize your happiness. Her words felt like salvation. I had allies. There were Lindsay, Nicholas, and the people from our new community. I wasn't alone. Since then, I've been participating in volunteer activities in the community and continued providing medical support at shelters. I distributed relief supplies with Patty and helped Thomas with disaster preparedness training. Through this, I realize how fulfilling it is to be needed and appreciated. The desire to be acknowledged by my parents no longer existed within me. I had a loving family and supportive friends. That was enough. One evening, while watching Joseph and Ryan play in the garden, a video called Lindsay. Hillary, your expression seems softer lately. At Lindsay's comment, I couldn't help but smile. Really, maybe I've finally forgiven myself. Lindsay smiled back. From the other side of the screen, she said, You're strong, Hillary. I've always been on your side. With her words in my heart, I beamed a genuine smile. I no longer needed to be bound by the past. From then on, I was going to live my own life. After all, I wasn't alone anymore. Life in the new town was gradually healing my heart. One day, I received a call from the bank. Is this Hillary Anderson? I need to confirm something with you. Yes. What is it? There has been an application for a new credit card under your name recently. Do you know anything about this? I paused, breathless. I hadn't made such an application. Could it be? No. I have no idea about this. Can you stop the application? Certainly. I'll go ahead and put a credit freeze on your account for safety. After hanging up, I trembled as I called Nicholas. Nicholas, this is serious. The bank just told me someone tried to open a credit card in my name. I think it might be my parents. Nicholas was silent for a moment before responding in a low voice. I can't believe they would go that far. Maybe you should consider legal action. I nodded deeply. There was no more hesitation. I was ready to stand up to protect myself and my family. The next day, accompanied by Lindsay, I visited a lawyer named Wesley Harrison. He was a middle-aged man with a calm demeanor, and he listened attentively to my story. I see. If there has been a credit card application made under your name, this is clearly a case of identity fraud. Considering the past financial support you've provided, it is also possible to claim damages. I was surprised by Wesley's words. The idea of claiming damages had never crossed my mind. But is it really okay to go that far? Wesley smiled kindly. Hillary, what your parents have done constitutes financial exploitation. You haven't done anything wrong. Lindsay squeezed my hand. Hillary, stop blaming yourself. I've watched you suffer for a long time. Now it's time to protect yourself. Encouraged by her words, I made up my mind. Please proceed with legal action against my parents. Several weeks later, I was standing in court. My parents, through their lawyer, had repeatedly offered settlements, but I refused. I felt that if I forgave their actions, the same thing would happen again. During the trial, Wesley explained the situation calmly and accurately on my behalf. The plaintiff, despite being a victim of a disaster and living under difficult conditions, continued to provide medical support in the affected area. During this time, the defendants, her parents, used her name without permission to apply for a credit card. Additionally, they have been receiving financial support from the plaintiff for many years, which clearly constitutes financial exploitation. My parents had nothing to say in response. They just looked down, glaring at me resentfully. I faced their gaze squarely. There was no need to be afraid anymore. The judgment was in my favor. My parents were ordered to pay damages, and a restraining order was issued. At that moment, I finally felt a deep sense of relief. After the trial, Lindsay and I stopped by a cafe. Holding a warm cup of coffee, I quietly muttered, So, it's really over now. Lindsay smiled gently. Yes, Hillary. You did well. Holding the cup tightly, I closed my eyes. The pain, anger, and sadness I had carried were slowly being released from my heart. I was no longer bound by my parents. From now on, I would carve out my own life. Looking outside, the clear blue sky stretched out, as if blessing the start of my new life. I took a deep breath and started walking forward. With the trial over, I had finally achieved peace of mind. The court's orders for my parents to pay damages and the restraining order were not just legal victories for me. They were proof that I had protected myself and moved on from the past. Several weeks later, Lindsay called me. Hillary, there's something I need to tell you. What is it? Lindsay hesitated for a moment before starting to speak, her voice mixed with a sigh. It seems that our parents have started family therapy. I gasped. Our parents? Undergoing family therapy? I couldn't believe it. What do you mean? After the trial, it seems they were quite depressed, especially Mom, who feels like she's lost everything now that she can't live that luxurious life anymore. But Dad has started to change. He's reflecting on what happened during the trial and has started counseling. I was speechless. My father? Attending counseling? It was almost unheard of for him to express his emotions. And so, they decided to start family therapy together. It all started when Dad said, if we continue this way, everything will be destroyed. A mix of disbelief and slight relief filled my heart. Yet, I was not ready to let my guard down so easily. And then? I asked cautiously. What are they hoping for? Do they want forgiveness or something? Lindsay shook her head. No, I just wanted to let you know. The courage you showed by standing up for yourself has ultimately led to them changing. Hearing this, I felt a slight weight lift from my shoulders. A few days later, a letter arrived in my mailbox. The sender was my parents. With trembling hands, I opened the envelope, and there were words written in my mother's handwriting to Hillary. I don't know where to start, but first, let me apologize. We relied too much on you and were always thinking of ourselves, which I deeply regret. After the trial, we felt like we had lost everything, but in reality, we had lost sight of what was truly important long ago. Now, we are undergoing family therapy and confronting our mistakes. Your dad is slowly trying to change, and for the first time, I am taking a hard look at myself. Please, we want to start over. Although what I did to hurt you can never be forgiven, from now on, I sincerely wish for your happiness. Sincerely, your mom. I finished reading the letter and took a deep breath. The fact that my mother, who had always been so distant and cold, was admitting her mistakes and apologizing was unexpected. However, my heart didn't immediately lighten. The wounds from the past aren't so easily healed. That night, I showed the letter to Nicholas. After reading it silently, he gently held my hand. Hillary, whatever you decide, I'm with you, he said. Wrapped in his warmth, I spent a long time thinking. The next day, I called Lindsay. Lindsay, I've read the letter. What did you think? She asked. I'm not ready to forgive them just yet, but I won't let them control me anymore. I'm going to live my own life. It seemed like Lindsay quietly nodded in agreement. Yeah, that's good. The most important thing is that you're happy. Later, I wrote a response to my parents. I didn't write that I forgave them. I simply stated, I will continue to live my life. If my parents are trying to change, that's their issue to resolve. I'm no longer bound by the past. The days that followed were peaceful. I shared laughs with Patty and Thomas, and my bond with Lindsay grew stronger than ever. The twins grew a little every day, and my bond with Nicholas deepened. One day, as I watched the twins play in the garden, I looked up at the sky. A single cloud drifted slowly across the clear blue expanse. The weight of the past in my heart was gradually lifting. I am no longer uncertain. I know my worth, and I will continue to walk my own path. The storm has passed. Now, I am finally free.